Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Vince Green.
And I'm your host, John Tui.
And this is Talking Points. Let's get to it, motherfuckers. Let's talk at the points.
We're talking the points. This is a real song.
Talk at the points. All right, Noli, we're back for another episode of Talking Points. In this week's episode, we're going to focus on the recent announcement of Bruce Willis's retirement. The legend, the icon, the action star of the 80s turned 90s. The man himself, John McClane. What's your thoughts, motherfucker?
Yeah, it does. It always feels like the end of an era. And I suppose when it comes to action stars, I know you end up kind of equating in real life to kind of what you've seen of them on the silver screen. But you want it to be with a bang. You know what I mean? You wanted the last hurrah and him to 100% go out on his own terms. And so it's not just him retiring because people retire and not many people are as lucky to have the career that he has had. It's just the sadness of going out on what is almost certainly absolutely nobody's terms. So
aphasia or something. I think it's
aphasia. I think
aphasia. Sorry.
Yeah. It's a language disorder, and it seems that like I think it puts into kind of a cognitive decline.
Yeah,
your ability to understand, like, control language expressions and understanding what's going on around. So that's just absolutely an awful thing, and I hope it sounds like it's something that can that how fast it happens is obviously the thing, because it's a aggressive thing. But it was very sad. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And so it was sad, but I mean, you kind of, when you stopped, you kind of go, wow, Bruce Willis, that was a career. That was one hell of a career. He's made some, and especially when we grew up with Jean-Claude and Stallone and Schwarzenegger, and then we had Bruce Willis, and he was just kind of like, maybe I can be an action star, because Bruce, like, I'm sure Bruce would kick my ass 6 ways from Sunday, but I'm just saying, he didn't have that, like, he didn't have the high kick, and he didn't have the muscle. He didn't have, like,
he was like
Mr. Olympia.
It was like the Stone Cold of the action hero world. Like, you know what I mean? He came in normal enough looking dude, and he just starts throwing down with motherfuckers. Like when Stone Cold was in wrestling, he just came in and he's like throwing down with guys like face paints, like the Undertaker dressed like a dead guy, and Stone Cold's just there in his underpants, and he's just drinking beers, getting split open left, right, and center. You know what I mean? That was kind of like Bruce Willis. He was like the Stone Cold of the action heroes, where he didn't have all the muscles and like the fucking chiseled abs or whatever, like, but he was in there throwing down, fucking getting blown up, doing his thing. Like, the Die Hard franchise is one of the most memorable franchises of all time in terms of action movies.
Oh my god, it's literally up there. We have Peralta in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and everything to him is the Die Hard movie, because it was the perfect movie. And as somebody who's of the same generation of him, it's on back when we used to have to, like, actually watch television to see our movies. Like Die Hard and Die Hard with a Vengeance were two that you would kind of see a few times before the
Christmas
year was
time.
out.
It's Christmas movie,
because it is a Christmas movie. And that was the end of that debate. But it gets to the point where you actually have a genuine appreciation for it, like a genuine appreciation. It feels like you have the nostalgia for it, and it also is, by any metric, an excellent action film.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That even today,
Rickman,
Alan Rickman at the height of his powers, and this is still, to this day, this kind of it gets used like, it was a really good film. Now, I'm not saying it's Die Hard, when they're talking about action films, it's still this benchmark 36 years later, between somewhere in that area. 87, I think it came out. Absolutely phenomenal career, and he was kind of a likable, charming motherfucker for like 40 years, and I love the fact that he can look back on that, and I hope him health. What about you? How do you feel with this? What was the first thing that went through your head when you got the news?
I was disappointed that obviously that he was returning the way he was returning, because, like, as you say, you want to see someone like that go out in his own terms. Like, you know what I mean? He's a fucking monolith in terms of, like, he's acting. Like, I know his last 10 years of movies have been a lot of B movies, and maybe because he knew he was ill before he ever announced it, and he was trying to kind of get his nest egg in order. Maybe that might have been a case, because some people have said that, like, he wasn't the same person. But, like, before the illness, however long he's been suffering from it, before the aphasia thing, his career is fucking iconic, man. Like, Sixth Sense, like, Unbreakable, like even close, like even more recently, Glass, like, you know what I mean? Like, he met Glass, he could have been suffering from aphasia.
It could have been,
and he still comes out with, like, a movie like Glass, like, which is not an amazing movie, but it's still far from terrible, like, you know what I mean? Like, so, but I just think, like, it's a shitty way for him to fucking wrap up such a legendary career that, like, I will forgive him like for any kind of VOD movies he makes, like, you know, video on demand movies, because I've no problem with that when someone's like 60 years old and they still want to do their thing, but they don't have the same drawing power. So they're making
Yeah,
like a slightly worse versions of what they would have made in their heyday. Like that
yeah.
happens to a lot of them. It happened to Schwarzenegger, happened to Van Damme,
De
Sticker,
Niro.
yeah, Robert De Niro, Al
You know what I
Pacino,
mean?
like
Like,
you know what I mean. So it happens to all of them because just that generation that brought you to that level either have gone on or like, you know, passed away or whatever the older you get, or they're just like slightly interested in different things because the older they got themselves, that your career always going to take a strange dive near the end, especially when you're such an a niche kind of person. Whereas he was, even though he did a lot of dramatic roles, he became an action hero and an action star, and that's what he leaned into in his later years. The kind of the stereotype that people saw him as, instead of like the dramatic roles that he's done throughout his career, and he kind of leaned into the action things the later went on, because some of his best roles were the dramatic roles. And I think that, like, you know, if you weigh up his body of work, that he's never been out of the public eye for the last 30 years. And
I'm
that's
looking
fucking
through it,
incredible.
and that's very, very true. I mean, he's released films in as recently as the last couple of months on Netflix, something called Out of Death. So yeah, that came out of July last year. So he has been absolutely like, but yeah, like good, bad, or indifferent. He was in GI Joe. Like you're looking through them. Death Wish, which was I haven't seen, but it was ill received. But maybe Red, I actually really enjoyed. But like Sin
There's
City
two of
was
them, isn't
great.
there?
Yeah, there's two Reds. But
Since
yeah,
he was
that's it.
amazing.
Yeah, he was just absolutely banging them out, absolutely all of the time. And the thing is, and I'm this is not said. I mean, he was in the Last Boy Scout, which is also an absolutely incredible movie.
Yeah.
But he was never like that. He was the best actor. Like that wasn't what he brought to the table. He wasn't like coming like with a Pacino performance.
Yeah.
He had this thing that worked.
Charisma.
Charisma. Yeah, that's absolutely undeniable. But I don't know, like it seems like they're a dying breed. You know what I mean? Just as somebody you could just drop into a movie and have that has the charm and knows their way around the joke and can even speak in a monotone and have it be very, very funny. And I don't know, I bought his charm and I never ever got sick of it. Now that I'm looking back over it, you know.
That's what I'm saying. Like, same with Nicolas Cage. Like, I don't care how bad the movie is. I'll watch a movie if they're in it, because even if they're phoning it in, nobody phones it in better than Bruce Willis or Nicolas Cage.
Yeah,
They'll phone it in a way. Like, I know he said he's never phoned it in, but like he can't deny that he's given more effort to certain roles than he did to other roles. Because like when you look at like Looper, how good he was in that, or if you look at Glass or Unbreakable, these kind of roles that he really leaned into and he really got stuck into and gave a good portrayal of the character. That like when you look at some of some of the science fiction movies he made recently, that one with Frank Grillo, what movie is that called? It's just a new movie that was on Netflix. Oh, it's got a stupid title, I think. Um,
um oh god, yeah, is that the one where 1 second, I'm gonna look it up real
yeah,
quick. Continue with your point.
yeah, and even though he says that he didn't phone it in certain parts, that like I just
Reprisal.
Reprisal, is that what it was called? Is it?
It was 2018 movie. He was in with Frank Grillo called Reprisal.
I think that might be another one altogether. He was in a few of
Because
them.
Frank Grillo is kind of doing the scene. Oh my god, his box office was 180 grand.
Yeah, well, you know, if I make 180 grand off my book, I'll be very happy.
Wait, Vinny, tell us more about your book.
So set in the Midwest.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like even though his movies kind of veered off near the end and all that kind of stuff, and he phoned it in sometimes, whether he says he did or not, and whether or not that was due to his condition, that it seemed like he was phoning it into us, but for him it was just like a case of that he was finding it hard to grasp the situation, like, you know what I mean, and that's totally fair, if that was the case. But like at the end of the day, he always entertains, no matter what Bruce Willis you get, no matter if it's the Bruce Willis prime in the 90s going into the 2000s, or if my suspicion is that he's been suffering for this longer and he's let on, and it probably got to the case where he couldn't deny it anymore.
His kids are saying that have that word be given to the world and now have everyone know it has been absolutely surreal. Because obviously somebody who has been an A-lister, like an A-lister, like Bruce fucking Willis. There's nobody who doesn't know who Bruce Willis is, if you have any idea. But to have that word given to the world now, she said it's been surreal. Because obviously he's keeping a secret at that level of TMZ fucking, is just very, very, very impressive. And so obviously it must be, I'd say so. It's got to a point where there's no denying it.
Yeah.
Like he gets $1 million a day for shooting.
Oh, really?
You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what he was getting on Reprisal. He has $1 million a day deal, and he does cameos. Like, I mean, God,
that's genius.
It's genius. And Cosmic Sin.
Cosmic fucking Sin. That movie was trash, but I watched it. You know what I mean? And I only watched it because Bruce Willis did. Oh, and Frank Grillo, because Frank Grillo's entertainment as well. Like, you know, you can say what you want about Frank Grillo. I think he did another movie with Mel Gibson called Boss Level.
Yeah, oh man, I loved Boss Level.
Awesome movie.
That Groundhog's Day meets kind of a day, like Die Hard. Now it's neither Groundhog Day nor Die Hard. They're staples, but I'm just saying it tried to mesh that vein exactly. Yeah,
and like I think like even Mel Gibson now, he might not be making the same high quality movies he made once upon a time, but he's still directing high quality movies and stuff like this. But like anytime Mel Gibson's in a movie, if I see his name come up, I'm immediately interested in seeing that movie, whether or not if it's a high quality movie or not. Same with Bruce Willis, same with Nicolas Cage. They're guys we grew up with. They're guys we remember in their heyday in the 90s when they were blockbuster megastars. You know what I mean? That they were the shit. Like they were the normal guy in air quotes action stars. Lethal Weapon. You got Die Hard. You had Nicolas Cage movies like The Rock, Con Air, where he was kind of this like Con Air less so because he's like a fucking ranger or something. But like, you know, this kind of almost unassuming normal person.
Raising Arizona is a great example of what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, but I mean like an action kind of setting, because Raising Arizona he's a criminal, isn't he? No.
Yeah, and he has the baby. Remember, he takes on that fucking dude that shows up with the shotguns on his back and everything like that. Yeah, no, that was a great film growing up.
Coen Brothers, isn't it?
Yeah. But you're right, they are, and they were. I don't know, maybe they're going to be looked back on, and it's going to be like the way we look back on the 80s hair and 80s spandex. We're going like, what the hell were we thinking, you know, in that era or something? And maybe the kids now are going to look back and go, well, it's very cheesy, it's very corny. And we were like, yeah. It was sometimes it was popcorn entertainment, sometimes it was pop, but every now and again it was of the absolute highest quality.
It was iconic though.
Iconic.
Like, you know, look those years, The Rock, Independence Day. Like I know Independence Day is Will Smith or Will Smith. Couldn't resist. Who slaps a man at a war show? It's a joke, you fucking muppet. You made your career as a comedian. Can you not take a joke? Fucking dickhead. But around that time we had so many fucking awesome action movie blockbusters. The Rock, Con Air, like Independence Day, like I said, and you had like the Lethal Weapon movies, you had the Die Hard movies,
True Lies,
you know what I mean, like
Terminators and stuff.
So this is the reason why we still watch these people. Like, you know, we still watch Schwarzenegger, we still watch Nicolas Cage, we still watch a Will Smith, like, you know what I mean, like we still watch a Bruce Willis, we'll still watch fucking Mel Gibson, and because we grew up with these guys, like they're the guys that entertained us. We remember them when they were the heat in that kind of zenith of their careers, where they were the star. And I know it all came at different times for all those people I just mentioned, but every single one of them meet the criteria, or they were the star. And a lot of the times now in their more recent things, they've made less than great movies, but every now and again, they'll fucking kick out really entertaining movie like a Boss Level or some shit like that, or a Nicolas Cage with like a Color of Space or a Mandy. And anytime I show up, they might not always be the same quality as those movies that I just mentioned, but I'll always show up simply because they're there. And that star power is undeniable for Bruce Willis as well, you know?
Yeah, no, it is. It's absolutely undeniable. Bruce Willis is the Bruce Willis of Bruce Willis's, because unlike the Stallone and Schwarzenegger, where you do seem to have like an overlap, you know, like people have joked, what was the Last Action Hero, and in the Last Action Hero universe, Stallone was the Terminator.
Yeah,
you know, because there is that kind of joke where they're both like hard to understand at times, and they're both like they're quite interchangeable. But Bruce Willis kind of wasn't. So despite the fact that he didn't have the absolute like the Leonardo DiCaprio acting range or whatever have you, he did have this thing that only Bruce Willis seemed to have.
Yeah,
and when they managed to turn that into bank, that's what star power is.
Yeah,
instantly recognizable,
nailed it,
charismatic. Exactly, that guy that can do with a smile what everybody else needs this like really cool line to do. You know, Bruce Willis had that, man. He had that.
So he delivers a line. Welcome to the party, pal. You know what I mean? Like, you know, every fucking thing he does, like, it's just like he always had this like smile on his face, as if Bruce Willis himself
like was in on the joke.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like it's kind of like Bruce Willis is like, I'm just a guy. I can't believe I'm this awesome. Like people think I'm this awesome because I'm just being Bruce Willis. Like even like John McClane, I think is probably the closest to him as an like that character.
Oh yeah,
the closest to him as an actual person. Like, you know.
But this, I mean, like we talk about, like, Iron Man was always one of my go-tos because Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man worked because Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark kind of just works
because they are the same thing.
Because they are the same thing in so many ways. But the same, like somebody like John McClane, and he's like, look, the buddy cop movie. Like, you know, we had the cop and the street cop, and we had in open the building and all this kind of stuff. But McClane is Bruce Willis. There's just no way it could be any other way.
Of course, like you couldn't imagine anybody else.
Anybody else.
Nobody else.
You know, it's just
those first 4 movies are really, like, the first 3 are iconic. 2 not as much as 1 and 3, but part 4 is pretty entertaining. Part 5 is fucking dumpster fire.
Yeah.
Like, how anybody keeps hiring Jay Courtney is fucking beyond me. But like, you know what I mean? Best thing that ever happened to him is the Suicide Squad. Yeah, I said it. Helicopter crash. Too much, but I could.
No, I like it.
But no, so like that, like when you weigh up, like, you know, Schwarzenegger's got the Terminator movies. He's got Predator 1, you know, but I want to talk about the franchises that are inextricably linked to these people. Like, so Schwarzenegger's got Terminator, like Stallone's got Rambo and Rocky.
He's Rambo and Rocky. You couldn't leave one out. You couldn't leave one out.
Exactly. Like Van Damme, maybe Universal Soldier, not as much. He never reached the same zenith as those guys.
Bloodsport. Yeah, but he never reached it. No,
he's never
like
many.
Dolph Lundgren is another guy who's a huge name, but he never reached.
Yeah, you know, they're slightly below him, just slightly, or like on the same level as like a Chuck Norris, maybe. You know.
Yeah, you know what? I'd actually say somewhere in that Venn diagram, somewhere in between. Yeah, but I do know it. But I do agree with your point.
You know what I mean? And like, I just think like what makes an action star extra iconic, and its proof is in the pudding that we are ranking these guys slightly below and slightly above. Is these franchises are attached to Schwarzenegger. We said Terminator, Stallone, Rocky and Rambo, Mel Gibson, Lethal Weapon, and Bruce Willis for Die Hard. Like, those are some of the biggest. Like, I know if you want to take out Rocky, because technically not an action franchise, because it's just a sports movie kind of thing, like in drama. So if you just want to include Terminator, Rocky, Terminator, Rambo, Lethal Weapon, and Die Hard, they're probably 4 of the most iconic franchises of all time. Like in terms of action movies. Like, can you name an action franchise that's probably grossed more than any of those? I doubt there is any.
Oh, you know what, man? I don't think it's worth the mental power to even go through because I can't. It's definitely not on. It's not on the tip of my tongue. You know, God no.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
But even, you know, they opened up a Planet Hollywood or whatever those things are called together. And it was really funny when they were all like in the 90s and stuff. And again, always Bruce Willis just looked like the odd man out. But you're right, he absolutely earned his place there. Like you said, the zenith, the absolute top of the mountain for this culture that there was, especially the 90s. It belonged to action. The 80s might have belonged to like horror. And, you know, you could just go through. And now we're in the kind of superhero phase maybe. But the 90s belonged to action. And that the 3 people that they owned, that was these 2 absolute, you know, giant, spectacular, you know, cuts of men. And then you had Bruce Willis. And I always thought that of them all, Bruce Willis was the charm. You know, he never had to play second fiddle.
That's the thing. Like, he didn't need muscles because he had such a good personality. Like, you know what I mean? Like even though he bulked up, like in between, you can tell in between, like his later movies and the earlier movies he did, that he's a lot bigger. Like, you know what I mean? He definitely bulked up in terms of from Die Hard 1 and Die Hard 5. There's a difference completely in physique. And like, but he never went like, oh, I'm fucking rip my shirt off. He was going around in Die Hard with a wife beater in his bare feet, ripped the shreds, like, you know what I mean? Like, ripped the shreds, and like his feet were fucking bleeding and they were tied up in rags and shit. There was nothing like glorious about it. You know what I mean? That's what I loved about Die Hard. There was nothing like standing there with a massive gun like in Rambo, and he's like da 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 da, and he's like fucking gleaming and like, you know, like, and he's 6-pack and he's like da da, and like in Predator and shit like that, and like they're all muscle bound. But you see in Die Hard, this guy is covered in muck, blood, and he's
that's what I'm saying. He would never have a commando.
Yeah,
like by the time he got to the top of what's the name of the tower? Nakatomi Tower. By the time he got to the top, he'd earned his stripes.
Yeah,
he'd walked barefoot through glass. He'd taken gunfire. He'd been in like a fist fight with a crazy fucking Aryan Superman base.
Yeah,
you know. But he had when he got there. But do you remember? I remember, and then in my head jumps to Commando. There's one scene where he's got the quadruple rocket launcher. and he's running away, and there's like 5 guys behind him, and they've all got machine guns, and they're just blasting away. And he runs for a couple of seconds, and then turns around and shoots the rocket and kills them all. And I was like, "What happened? What were those bullets doing?" It's like we're talking the like full spread, like but like
they're just like nah, and he's just like. It's like lining up the rocket launcher.
Exactly.
It's like, wait, is these Russian commands?
Licking his thumb and checking the wind.
Get a blade of grass. Just like leaves the rocket launcher down, and they're like still firing at him. He gets the blade of grass and just chucks it. And you go, oh, easterly winds, about 20 knots. Cool. I got this. And he's like lining up. Oh shit! I have to reboot it.
And they haven't had to reload once.
Man, the fucking ammo count on 1980s machine guns were insane. Like
I think it was up there, 160, 170. Thousand. Yeah. That's it. Like even like his first kill, he fights the quite nerdy guy in Die Hard, and he kills him, and then he sends him down in the elevator with like, now I've got a machine gun.
Yeah, ho, now
now we've got a machine gun. And you just think like, this guy is just on a wing and a prayer, and that's what Bruce Willis films had. Like you had that whole like he's going to get hurt. In fact, and there was the idea that he was actually in peril. That I think a lot of the Rambos and stuff didn't have. The Rambo certainly didn't have it. Terminator wasn't designed that way. He was a robot. I'm not wouldn't put that in the same vein.
Cybernetic organism.
Yeah, like the best one. That's why I think Schwarzenegger at his absolute best was Predator.
Yeah,
because that was him.
Peril.
Yeah, because he's in peril. But like Bruce Willis made his money being in actual peril.
Yeah,
he died on the Meteor. You know what I mean?
Armageddon, another movie we didn't mention.
I didn't even mention that was an absolute blockbuster. But he did. He died on the Meteor. He shot himself through his own collarbone to take out the guy in Die Hard 4 or Die Hard whatever it was. So there was just that. And Bruce Willis was what if you got stuck in this scenario and somebody gave you a gun and you're thinking, shit, I don't know, I suppose I'll just crawl up the vents, hope for the best.
Exactly. Like,
it wouldn't be like, because like Rambo took on the Russians in the third one.
Yeah.
You remember there's that scene was like, it looks like half the Russian army's out there. Fuck them.
Man, one thing I loved about Bruce Willis, especially John McClane, is like he's the kind of person that like he's always been just like ridiculously tough and really good at problem solving. And he always found himself in a situation where the people that were against him always underestimated him until they were fucked.
Yes.
Yeah, it was that kind of thing. Like, apart from maybe part 3, because he was playing with him and toying with him. And even in part 3, he didn't respect his intelligence because he was just toying with him and Samuel L. Jackson, Jules, I think it is. And they were just Zeus, wasn't that his name? Yeah. Zeus.
Why did Jules sound right to me? Was it Zeus?
Jules is Pulp Fiction. But yeah, Zeus is like Father Apollo, shove a lightning bolt up your ass, Zeus. Because he was like, hey Zeus. He goes, why are you saying hey Zeus? Do I look Puerto Rican to you? The guy was calling you hey Zeus, so he was saying hey Zeus.
That was I had only ever seen, I don't even know if I seen Pulp Fiction before I seen the third Die Hard. So I do think the third Die Hard with a Vengeance was my introduction to Samuel L. Jackson, and he was fantastic in that film. Yeah. And I think there were 2 guys I've argued has been overexposed, but at the same time, they're not 2 people who can't really give you a great film. And they both got together and gave us a great film. I'm glad they worked together, actually, because I hold them both in such high regard in that sense,
Yeah, they worked together in Pulp Fiction, they worked together in Unbreakable.
Glass and Unbreakable, yeah.
They do work well together. They've got natural chemistry. They really do. Like, you know what I mean?
But they're 2 people who kind of have a lot of natural charisma. So it just seems like, unless it'd be one thing or the other, that they absolutely could not work together, or that they'd be brilliant together. I don't think there would have been any gray. You know what I mean? I don't think there would have been any great. And it's funny, I want to jump on a point. When you were saying, why do people... A talking point. But you were like, why do people keep hiring Jay Courtney or something like that? And it's, but like that's the thing. They're trying to wedge like Scott Eastwood, and they're trying to, there's these guys. And maybe, you know what? Maybe we're sitting here in just like, who was Hugh Jackman when he became the Wolverine? So maybe I'm sitting here in 6 months and I'm absolutely eating my own words. And that's fine. I'm not above it. I mean, I'm wrong. But I feel like there's been a lot of guys over the last few years that they're trying to shoehorn in as like, we'll make him the next like action guy. He's got the jawline. We're going to make him the new this or the new this or the new, Bruce or something like that.
Jason Statham is the closest.
Jason Statham, yeah, and he's had an excellent career. Yeah, but at that same time, again, I put him slightly above Van Damme, but you're not putting him in a Bruce Willis. You're not putting him on a Bruce Willis.
Oh no, but I think he's the closest to that kind of mold of a Bruce Willis, where he has the charm, the charisma. He's not like stacked with muscles. He can fight, even though he's more of a martial artist than Bruce Willis. That's granted, like, you know. But look at the back catalog of movies he's done. Like, he's done a lot of dramatic roles as well. But he has franchises. He's had Transporter. He's had Crank, and like, you know what I mean. And one thing all these actors have had is a combined franchise too that we haven't really touched upon is the Unbreakable franchise, the Expendable franchise. And like, we finally got to see Bruce Willis, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jason Statham, all these dudes in one movie together. What do you think of these fucking movies? Little too late, or do you just watch them for the corn?
I watched them for the corn.
Yeah.
You know, that at this point it was just like, yeah, it did feel like it was a little bit too late, but also why not? Like, why not? Like, these guys have earned this incredibly self-indulgent, over the top, you know, make Van Damme a bad guy.
They made fun of themselves as well.
And they made fun of themselves. You know, you're always coming back. I'll be back, you know. And they did. They had a little bit of fun at their own expense. So there was a little, see, I always say this to you, the films you cannot stand are the films that don't seem to, like a bad M. Night Shyamalan film. It doesn't seem to realize how bad it is.
Yeah.
So you're watching it and going, well,
like The Happening.
Like The Happening is what actually was going through my head when I said it. Happening.
Or Planet Earth. Or After Earth, sorry.
After Earth, yeah, but at the same, I never actually watched that. But at the same time, it's not being aware, and I can't forgive it. Just how do you not know you're making a very, very, very bad film? But he knew he was making kind of a corny, kind of silly film, and he tipped his cap to us, the audience, so many times. I was like, yeah, I don't think there's 3 Expendables. I think, is there? I think I've watched 2, and I'll whichever one I haven't watched, I'll get to at some point, and that's just fine. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's how they are. But I'm glad those guys have earned it 10 times over. Like Dolph Lundgren deserved a little bit of spotlight, you know, and Van Damme deserved another go around. So yeah, no, I definitely tip my cap to all of them, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but like the amount of entertainment they've given us from the 80s to the 90s and onwards, like, you know what I mean? Like, I know their apex was in the 80s and the 90s when you want to talk about it, but maybe Bruce Willis going into the 2000s, because he made a lot of quality movies in the 2000s as well. Like, so.
Oh, yeah, well, that's when Unbreakable was.
Yeah, and Sixth Sense and all these.
Sixth Sense was really... 99, I think. Yeah.
Oh, so was it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was that era though.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so, like, the longevity that these dudes have has been incredible, and it's like, it's deserved as well, because as I said, they've done nothing but entertain us. Whether or not these movies are always amazing or not, they're always entertaining. Whether for one, like Cosmic Sin, that's not a great movie, but I laughed my ass off and I was still entertained by it. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm obviously going into Cosmic Sin with a less of a expectations than I would go into like a Looper, where you have like, it's a mainstream, even though it's a slightly indie sci-fi, but you have someone like a Ryan Johnson, you have a Joseph Gordon-Levitt attached to it, that it's going to be a solid movie. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt is one that doesn't make a lot of movies, but he makes generally very good movies. And that's something that's like, when you go into that movie, you can have heightened expectations and you enjoy it. And like in Cosmic Sin, it's like, it's a different, you know, it's going to just be kind of like a kind of B class action movie, and if you go in with those expectations, you're going to be entertained by it. But if you go in anything else above that, you're going to be disappointed. And I just think that when you look at the trajectory of their careers, that I think that if you always went in with the right expectations to their movies, that they'd always entertain you. Whether or not that was the heightened expectations of the Die Hard movies and Armageddon, or if you go on with Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, look at the career this dude has had. And you go on even with the movies like Expendables, Cosmic Sin, Looper. But if you go in and all these varying degrees of expectations to these movies, you'll always be entertained. Because
entertained should be
that's number one.
That's his benchmark. Yeah, that's his benchmark. Yeah,
he's entertained as always, and sometimes he's wowed us. That's what else could he do?
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because like Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, 2 of them are so beautifully done. Those movies are not only the M. Night Shyamalan's best movies, but they're Bruce Willis, some of his best performances. They're very muted, they're very withdrawn, and it's like very insular kind of performance where it's like introverted, and it takes away from some of the charm that we know him for. But still, he uses that charm in a slightly different way, but to ultimate effect. And it shows you, like Sylvester Stallone did in Copland, or even Schwarzenegger did more recently, like a film like Maggie, that you have these movies that these dudes can actually act if you give them a chance. And even when they're not doing the acting, they're doing action, and they're doing it better than anybody, and they've been doing it better than anybody for about 30 years. And even though some of these movies aren't amazing, they're still fucking entertaining. And that's what Bruce Willis has always done. He's always entertained us, and sometimes he's wowed us. But when he's wowed us, they've been fucking epic movies in their own right, you know?
Agreed. Agreed. Before we get out of here, is there anything you'd like to say to give like a last hurrah to Bruce Willis? For me, I think it's just thanks. It's been an absolute hell of a ride, and just thanks for all of the years you've given us. God, man, and he's not, and you're not going to be replaced. And I think that's probably how it should be.
Well, the only thing I have to say about Bruce Willis is they're like, watch some Bruce Willis movies. They'd be fun, it said. They'd be fun, it said. Come over here, watch some Bruce Willis movies. They'd be fun, it said. And they were not wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You know, we could get together and we could have a few laughs and we could watch some Bruce Willis movies.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing about it, man. Like, just he's an icon, he's a legend, and I hope his health fucking holds long enough that he gets much older before it really starts to degrade on him, and he can kind of see out his retirement and actually enjoy it, because he's given us so much enjoyment over the last few years that he does deserve nothing but a good fucking retirement, because he's a legend. And that's all I have to say is, like, I hope he dies hard. That's all I'm saying.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. We'll leave it at that. Anyway, let's get out of here, man.
Cool. See you next time, motherfuckers. I'm your host, Vincent Green.
And I'm your host, Old John Toohey.
This is Talking Pints. We're talking about Bruce Willis's retirement. See you next time, folks. Peace.
Don't want to miss a thing. Peach.